Curiosity. Do you know the rest of that song? It's a song by the Jets from the 80s. Am I dating myself? Anyway, whatever. Curiosity is not just for the kids, guys. It's also for you. And today's episode is all about curiosity and why we need to rediscover this long-lost childhood trait of ours so that we can unlock this final and most important characteristic of what it is to be a true creating maven. Are you ready? Are you curious? Let's do it.
Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your Reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create.
There's a story about me that my brother Io likes to tell. I think he gets a kick out of yet another example of how I came out of the womb a strange child. Actually, strange child is what my sister Nikki referred to me for years, but did it bother me? No, because I actually got a kick out of seeing her seeming confusion about who I was. Anyway, Io likes to tell me about how when I was younger and we were living in Liberia. Wait, hold up. I know you're probably getting confused now if you've listened to this podcast from the beginning. Like you're thinking, wait, how many different countries is she going to refer to in these childhood stories? She's talked about Nigeria and Niger, and now we're in Liberia. Well, like I said in episode 2, I grew up throughout West Africa. And even though our family is Sierra Leonean, I'm actually the only one of my parents' kids who was born in Liberia. And this story is about my first few years of life in Liberia. So keep up. Okay, back to the story. So Io says that while we were living in Liberia, we lived in a house that had a driveway that was made up entirely of gravel stones. And for some reason, I was very fond of sitting out in the front yard, picking up these gravel stones and sucking them, like licking with a relish all of the dirt that I found on them. Like I would lap it all up. And I was probably around 3 about this point. And not only that, I was really into eating the leaves off of this bush that grew in our front yard. So one day he's watching me do this and wondering, what is this girl? What is she doing? Why is she so into these bushes and eating the leaves and sucking the gravel? So he goes over, grabs a piece of one of the leaves and chews it and spits it out of his mouth because it is the most bitter thing that he has ever tasted. And he looks over at me and he's just flabbergasted as I'm like chomping along on this thing. And he just can't understand how I'm eating it. And I don't understand it either because many, many years later, I am a committed sweet tooth. So I don't understand how I could have possibly at any point in my life ever been into anything bitter in my life, ever. But what this story is a great example of is the fearless curiosity of children. I must have been curious, so curious to start with, to put these things in my mouth in the first place. And I guess you could say my brother was curious too, but he was like 6 years older too. But, so there's some other things going on there. Anyway, we're like both curious. We're kids. But this is how children are. And more so even like babies. They explore by putting things into their mouths. They're like curious. They wonder what's going on. They put their fingers into sockets. Now, I'm not advising this for children or for you, but you know what it is to look into a baby's face and just see it on their face, or any child, that boundless wonder, that, ooh, what's this? Let me investigate that, that investigative spirit, that openness to discovery. It's a beautiful gift that many of us have lost along the way. Somewhere along the way, we got convinced, definitely by high school, that we needed to know things already. We needed to be sure of things already. We needed to have the answers already, all of them. That need to know, and worse still, be seen as knowing, as bad as it is, doesn't kill, but it definitely suppresses something priceless in us. And it's time to revive it. Time to revive that thing. In episode 2, I told you about how when I was in elementary school in Nigeria, I was in school plays where our headmistress, Mrs. Jackson, made the unconventional choice to never give us a script. We knew our characters. We knew the way each scene was generally supposed to begin and end, and that was it. The rest was ad lib, and she went on to build the script based on our improvisation. And what this did was give us something very special. She allowed us the room to explore our imaginations and our ideas about who the character would be. And we got to experience this, but not just for our own characters, but we got to see it in our friends and watch them as they explored their imaginations and brought life to their own characters. And there was no way that we could have created the fun and the exciting play experiences that we did if she hadn't given us this freedom. And that's what curiosity is. The act of freely running after and exploring all the outer bounds and corners of your imagination. Because so many wonderful things can be found at the end of such a journey. Like Alice, who followed the rabbit down the hole and landed in Wonderland, or Dorothy, who followed the yellow brick road to meet the Wizard of Oz. For us, the end of our curiosity journey was to create dynamic and interesting plays. The end was creating. So it's unfortunate that there are phrases like "curiosity killed the cat" floating around out there, because we tend to absorb the fear behind that saying, grow into it, and then we live it out. Then we become fearful that being curious, asking questions, exploring the unknown is going to lead to humiliation, failure, and sudden death. And somewhere in the back of our minds, we know it won't. So we spend our entire adult lives trying to get that willingness to be curious back. If your organization is anything like mine, then the buzzword du jour is agile this and agile that. But what is agile really but adults attempting to get back to a state of childlike wonder and willingness to experiment and learn? It's all an elaborate attempt to make room for curiosity, the bedrock for creating. If you're going to be a creating maven who is creating beautiful things and experiences in the world with your gifts and offering them in service, then you've got to re-embrace this part of you, the curious, exploring you. When I think back on it, my college trip to teach English in Bosnia was like this. In episode 14, I shared about the trip, but one thing that I didn't go into detail was about how, in addition to it being a rejuvenating time of deep connection, it was a creating summer. I experienced a bumper crop of creativity that summer. Being in a new country, in a new town with new people who were speaking a new language, eating new foods, it had my brain cells on fire. One of the most exhilarating things I did that summer was create immersive learning days for my students. I'd prepped them for these immersive days with weeks and weeks of learning songs in English that were descriptions of different objects or how to say things. And I had songs where they would learn about different fruits and vegetables or, different professions. And it was all in English, and it was like set to music. So it was like a fun way to get it into their brain so that they would understand it. And this was to really get them ready for the day when I would have them do the role playing. So then we would have these immersive learning days. And one of these days was airport day. I had them create suitcases with handles out of construction paper, and they were to travel around to different spots in the room and practice their broken English with each other as they pretended to be passport control, baggage handlers, restaurant staff, and even the pilot and flight attendants on the plane they were boarding. Then we also did something similar for Market Day, where I had them create cutouts of money and fruits and vegetables that they learned about in those songs, and we would practice buying and selling in English. And this was so much fun. Now that I think about it, it was probably the most fun that I had that summer. And I would be alongside them and sort of answer their questions, and sort of give them words that they might not yet know or that they had forgotten. And I also had teaching aides in the classroom who knew some, bits and pieces of English too. So we all, our three groups, we would sort of hobble our English together and our translations together. And it was like a laughing, hysterical mess. And, but we managed to work across the language divide. And I know that they learned a lot because they were traveling to different countries and using the English that they'd learned. And it was so much fun. Oh my gosh. It was so much fun. And now that I think about it, there were even definitely influences of Mrs. Jackson's style in the experience, like that creating some parameters and giving some tools and then letting them sort of explore and play around with things. Well, this wasn't the only kind of creating I got into that summer. I wrote so much poetry in Bosnia, so much poetry. A lot of it was inspired by a boy that I fancied myself in love with at the time. Don't worry, it wasn't a guy who I met in Bosnia. It was a guy who was back in the States. But that summer I pined and whined and pined over this guy, and I poured my feelings out into endless poems that I created. I wrote lots and lots of poems about this guy. But I also wrote a lot of poems about Bosnia herself, poems about the landscape and the feelings that it evoked. Oh my goodness, so many feelings about how it felt like a home away from home. And these feelings were expansive and surprising because up until then, I had no idea it was possible to find a home away from home in a completely foreign land that you were visiting for the very first time. My curiosity took me on a journey to explore a new place, a new country, and the big surprise bonus gift was all the creating that I did. I also got to enjoy the wonderful things that Bosnians created, like their delicious foods, cevapcici and pljeskavica. And I really got into eating sour cream from living with Larissa and her family. I know, fascinating thing to pick up, but anyway. And I also enjoyed listening to the captivating music that was created by Dino Merlin, especially his hit song with Ivana Banfic called Godinama. And that was the rage all that summer. So it was a summer of creating things and enjoying things that people had created and drinking kaffa, lots and lots and lots of kaffa. I created and enjoyed the things that they created that summer, all thanks to being willing to get curious and to follow my own yellow brick road. So how about you? What's an example of a time when you followed your curiosity and in the end won the gift of creating? It is time for a repeat. Here are some things you can put into practice in order to flex that curiosity muscle if it's gotten rusty. 1, be intentional about trying something new. It could be as simple as the next time when you visit your favorite restaurant, instead of getting your same old tried and true, try something new that piques your interest. Don't worry about it possibly being something you don't like. Think, what if this turns out to be amazing and my new favorite dish? In fact, that's the way to talk about anything new that you're about to try. Instead of assuming the worst, why not assume the opposite? That this could be your new favorite thing. And then, why don't you try taking a different route home? Explore a new neighborhood while you're doing it. Observe how you're feeling. If the sense of wonder and awe comes over you. Or are you feeling like there could be danger, trouble around the bend, even feeling like it's forbidden? If it's the latter and you're feeling like it's forbidden, it's kind of a telltale sign that you've been indoors too long. Like, why does exploring a new neighborhood feel like naughty and forbidden to you? Like, why? You got to get out more. You got to flex this muscle more. And 2, sometimes you don't have to try something brand new to spark the new in you. It can be about bringing together 2 or 3 old things and mixing it up, so that you try something new by bringing old things together. Maybe you always walk home the same way, or you take the same path every time you walk somewhere, and that's tried and true. Maybe next time you do it while listening to a particular song that you typically reserve for when you're relaxing indoors. So these are like 2 old things you always do, and you can just combine them. Okay. I know this is a lame example, but I really tried hard to come up with something and I can't think of anything better. But you get my point. Like, you know what I mean? Find 2 old things in your life that are currently separate and bring them together. Like maybe eat 2 flavors of an ice cream that you typically eat separately. The point is to do something new by trying old things in a different way. This is also that you can flex that curiosity muscle and get back in touch with that feeling of wonder. You want to stretch out into your world and explore, find new things outside of you and new things inside of you. Maybe it's the time to go to new places like I did. What you'll find at the end of your curiosity, which is when you're in the act of exploring the edges of your imagination, what you find there can spark your creating power back into full force. So if you've been feeling stuck or a bit dull in this area, this is the best way to get you going again. There's no way to truly embrace being a creating maven without this characteristic. Curiosity is the gift that keeps on giving you opportunities to create more and more of who you are. And speaking of the gift that keeps on giving, the fable of the tortoise and the hare, I know I keep bringing it up every single episode, but this is the last time because this is the end of the series. But y'all, this is real. I'm going to share a link in the show notes. I saw this video that just had me dying, falling out with laughter, because there was this real life race between an old lumbering turtle and this bunny rabbit. And so the folks putting the race together gathered and they actually set up this whole contraption. And the bunny rabbit, legit, I kid you not, takes about 2 hops and then stops in the middle of the race, looks around, starts sniffing the air, and even looks backwards. And the crowd is going wild and everyone is just sort of like yelling and cheering. And the turtle is just steady on, moving forward until, I kid you not, the turtle wins the race. The turtle won the race. I couldn't believe it because this whole time I've been thinking, okay, this is just a fable. And so when I saw this in real life, I was screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is real. The turtle and the hare thing is real. And it's based on reality because someone way back when, hundreds of years ago, at some point was trying to clown on a turtle and wanted to prove a point. And they ended up getting egg on their face because when they put this turtle next to this bunny rabbit that could not deliver, this is what became the fable many, many years later. So it is real. It is real, guys. And it proves my point this whole time. Whenever I tell you turtles win, it is true. Not just in the fables, but also in real life. So don't let them clown you because you want to take turtle steps. Just be steady on, steady on, steady on. This is it, folks. This episode wraps this 5 C's of a Creating Maven series. We've covered commitment, which for us means that we're going to try again. We talked about no comparison, which we're going to do and put into practice by implementing a no personal story zone when it comes to other people's stuff. And confidence, which is about learning to stay in your own body and to quit trying to control how other people are thinking about and seeing you. Courage, which is about being willing to approach your vanishing point. And finally, curiosity, the act of exploring the edges of your imagination. We need all of this. And as we move on through the rest of this year and the rest of our Create journey, we'll find ways to practice these traits. As you go forth into your day, I hope you're going with a little bit more of a willingness to explore, a willingness to stumble about in the dark, and a willingness to approach life with that childlike, ooh, what's this? Before I go, I have to acknowledge something. The day after this episode officially launches is the 1-year anniversary of Reframe to Create. Yes, folks, Reframe to Create is 1! Woo! In addition to celebrating what has been an amazing journey of following my own curiosity, I want to celebrate you. To all of you who are listening, and to those of you who even go beyond that and send me messages to say how this podcast is impacting you and what you're doing with what you're learning, I want to say a big, big thank you. You are the reason that I do this. You've been here from the beginning, or maybe you just popped in on this episode. Whichever you are, I appreciate you, and I'm excited for you because this is just the beginning of your amazing transformation to becoming a creating maven who's making your unique contribution and getting paid to be you. Did you enjoy this series? Then share this episode with one friend who you want to support in their creating journey. Have you thought of their name? Good. Now go on over to the share button and send it on over. Sharing is caring. The more, the merrier. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?